What's happening? A good Monday afternoon to all of you. Thanks for joining us as always, 3 p.m. Eastern. This football season, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this show coming at you on YouTube. You don't want to miss it. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up, split second of your time. Give us that thumbs up. Help us out on the YouTube channel. Throw a comment in. You like, you dislike, you hate something, you love something. Don't forget to throw those comments in. They also help us against that algorithm with YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and review. Spotify, Apple Pods, our friends out there. Don't forget to do that as well. Okay, before we get into the offensive line, because the offensive line is the obvious, right? The offensive line is the low-hanging fruit. We all saw what happened last night against the Washington Commanders. Before we get to the offensive line, I want to start with the quarterback situation. Jacoby Brissett, I thought he looked pretty good last night. In the short amount of time we saw him, he read that hot route, right, to the running back, found Antonio Gibson out of the backfield against the blitz. Nice play by him. Thought he threw a great ball down the sidelines, left side of the field to KJ Osborne. For some reason, Osborne put up one hand, not both hands. Can't tell you why. Made no sense. Wrong play by the receiver, but I thought that was a great football from Jacoby Brissett. But, of course, as part of Brissett's night was him getting drilled. Absolutely drilled. Layden Robinson was pushed back into the backfield. Sidy So ran into Robinson. It was a mess. Brissett gets popped, leaves the game, right shoulder. Sounds like it's not serious. Sounds like he's going to be okay. He was on the sideline through the fourth quarter. Josina Anderson just tweeted a little while ago saying it doesn't sound like it's too serious. So it seems like, let's underline seems, it seems like Brissett will be okay and will be ready to play for week 1 in Cincinnati. My biggest takeaway from last night's game, and this even involves the offensive line play. My biggest takeaway was Drake Maye. I've said this from the very beginning, from when he was drafted back in April. The most crucial part of this season is making sure that Drake Maye develops right and he looks like a franchise quarterback. What we want to see is the progression from Maye. We've gone through it, right? We've gone through the steps, and last night was another step. Drake Maye looked like an NFL quarterback again. He's stacking good days at practice. He's stacking good preseason games. Snap by snap, he continues to get better. He's not perfect. There are still some issues going on, right? He's not perfect. Nobody says he's perfect. But he continues to show that he's taking steps in the right direction and certainly looks like an NFL quarterback and looks like the guy we were hoping he would look like early on, if not exceeding some of those expectations. If Drake Maye is a bona fide QB1 for the next 15 years, a franchise guy, then what happens this year is minuscule compared to the impact and importance of Maye being that guy and proving to be that guy. So last night, my biggest takeaway, Drake Maye continues to get better. And that's great news. We'll get to the offensive line a little bit because I think all of us saw what happened, right? But the biggest takeaway for me was Drake Maye. Thought he was really good. He had that scramble for like 17, 18 yards on 3rd and long. It was the right decision. It was the right time to pull off the scramble. Gets the first down. He converts, right? Then he has that bullseye throw to Jalen Polk. And I thought that was a very impressive play because of all the little things that went into it. Number 1, he's under center. Clean snap. Number 2, play action. Back to the defensive line, back to the offensive line, has to turn around and find his receivers. Look at his progressions, right? So he handles a snap, good play action, good footwork. He has to shift a little bit to the left, a little bit of pressure, not a ton, but he has to bide his time, slides a little bit to the left, shows patience, and throws a perfect ball to Jalen Polk for another first down. That play puts a lot of the pieces together. Alex Van Pelt's offense, Drake Maye's potential, married together. If you're going to run a Van Pelt offense, you've got to be able to do it under center. You've got to be able to run play action. You've got to be patient. You've got to read your progressions, and you have to be accurate to the middle of the field, intermediate areas. Now, that was a little bit towards the hash, right? But it was still the quintessential Alex Van Pelt play call and the quintessential execution by the quarterback. So that first down conversion, nice play. Nice play that I think means a little bit more than people might realize when you're just watching it with the naked eye during the live action. So that bullseye to poke, fantastic. The throw to Harris, right? He finds Kevin Harris. Now, people will say that's a dangerous throw, and it certainly is a dangerous throw, but there's different levels of dangerous. If you have the arm strength that Drake Maye has, and you can fire it off, if you can uncork that pass and beat the cornerback who's coming downhill, then it's the right play. Dangerous, risky for sure. But that's the difference, right? When people would sit there and tell me, oh, Drake Maye is just another Mac Jones. I did not want to insult those people. I try to handle those people with some kid gloves and try to patiently describe who Maye is as a football player and why he's not Mac Jones, not even close. Mac makes that kind of throw, that's a pick six. That throw to Kevin Harris last night, that is a pick six if it's Mac. It's not Mac. It's Drake. Drake has a lot more firepower in the right arm. So he is capable of completing that pass. Harris makes a couple of fantastic individual efforts and gets a touchdown out of it. That's the difference between having a quarterback who has a legitimate, bona fide NFL arm, somebody who has a strong arm and can make that throw and result in a touchdown instead of a pick six. That's 6 for you instead of 6 for the opposition. That's the difference. That's the kind of throw. And if you're wondering, Drake made a number of those throws during practice. During the padded practices, he made a number of those throws. Towards the sideline to the running back, enough zip. Yes, there's risk to it, but he's able to make that play. It might bite him in the ass every once in a grand while, but if he is able to give you what he gave you last night, the vast majority of the time throwing that football, then you make that throw. So that was a nice play. Something else we've seen from Drake, his ability to battle adversity. Now, I don't want to go too crazy. It's not like he was down 3 touchdowns with little time on the clock. We all have to take a deep breath and understand the progression from the young quarterback. Understand he's not perfect. Understand that he will face adversity at times, and he might not be able to battle the adversity and come out with positive results. But again, last night, and we saw this against Philadelphia, again last night, we see Maye put in a very difficult spot. He goes out there. What happens? First snap at his feet. Nick Leverett. Shotgun snap. Doesn't throw a ground ball like Fornadell did last week, but pretty close to it. Terrible snap. Maye has to jump on it. So right away, immediately, he's looking at 2nd and forever. He has a 2nd and 18. He had a 3rd and 14 on that first drive, right? So he's immediately put in a very difficult situation. You're staring at 2nd and 18. You just got into the game. And he's able, because of his talent, he's able to fight out of that. He's able to battle that adversity, get a first down, and eventually drive the team down the field. I mean, how many times did you see it, right? Penalties, setting them back. Bad offensive line play, setting them back. And he's still coming out with plus plays. How about when he gets his foot stepped on? So much happened last night. How about when he gets his foot stepped on, loses his cleat, and he's literally without a cleat? He doesn't freak out. He doesn't get all jittery and stuff and just drop to the ground. No. Finds Hasty for a first down, drops it off into the flat. Here you go. Let's move the chains. Adversity. Now, again, he wasn't perfect. There was a play that he did get a little skittish, and he just threw the football and missed the intended target by like 15 yards wide right. So there are going to be those moments, but he has shown the ability to kind of slow the game down, handle the adversity, take that deep breath, get positives out of negatives. And those are the things when we're talking about a 21-year-old man. I think he's still 21. I don't think he's turned 22 just yet. I want to look this up. Maybe he did turn 22. I don't want to be a liar. Nope. 4 days away. So happy early birthday to Drake. August 30th. He will turn 22 years old. 21-year-old out there, live bullets, dealing with the adversity, dealing with bad offensive line play, dealing with a cleat off of his foot. And he's able to get through it. Those small things that we watch, right? Those small bits of adversity, sometimes bigger bits of adversity. Every time he gets through, every time he pushes through one of those times, it makes me feel more confident that he is a guy that understands that he can get through the tough. He can find his way and be better at the end. And that's what we saw again. The off-platform ability, it is there. It's there in spades. We saw it in the touchdown that was called back because, you guessed it, an illegal formation. The off-platform throw to KJ Osborne. That's a perfect example of Maye doing things that some other quarterbacks and most other quarterbacks can't do at any level, including the NFL. And some people, I had one guy tweet at me, oh, he literally, threw a ball 40 yards to a wide open guy with no pressure. Well, if that's what you took out of that play, I vehemently disagree with you, sir. And in some cases, lady, if you saw that. No, what I saw was a quarterback that broke out of the pocket when there was going to be some pressure. He rolled out using his athleticism. He kept his eyes downfield. And then as he's reaching closer to the sideline and closer to the line of scrimmage, he uncorks a throw across his body, running to the left as a right-handed quarterback, running to his left, throws across his body, right? Throws it off of 1 foot. He's off 1 foot and chucks it 40 yards downfield in the air. There are not a lot of quarterbacks that can break that contain, roll out, keep their eyes downfield, running towards the left as a righty off 1 foot, uncork a throw 40 air yards perfectly to the intended receiver for a touchdown. Not many guys can make that play. And that goes back to my whole Mac Jones, Drake Maye stuff. Drake May's not Mac. Mac's not Drake, okay? Not even close. Mac's not making that play last night. He's incapable from a physical standpoint of making a play like that. And what really pissed me off was the fact that it was a fantastic play, and we can all kind of count that in our brains and say, great job by Drake, fantastic play, but it gets called back because Chooks gets his 57th illegal formation of the night. I wanted to grab my computer and throw it across my living room. Drake Maye, one of the things that he struggled with during camp, and I've been out there more than a handful of times, not out there as much as other people have been, but I've been out there more than a handful of times. I saw a bunch of padded practices, saw the joint practice. If there was one thing that stood out with Maye where he struggled, it was running the 2-minute offense. Brissett was much better. Even when Brissett was having a tough time and not playing as well, he was still better in the 2-minute drill. He was still driving the team down the field and getting them in position for at least a field goal attempt. Drake May's 2-minute drills would hit brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. And finally, when Drake Maye is running a 2-minute drill in a live game against live competition, and he's making some plays, and he turns in a terrific off-platform, off-schedule throw to KJ Osborne for a touchdown, of course it gets called back because of Chooks. That frustrated me watching that play out. Drove me nuts last night. Absolutely nuts. Finally, he got an opportunity to run a 2-minute drill, and he's on a heater and makes a great play, illegal formation. Don't forget to throw that thumb up as you're watching. If you enjoy the Drake Maye show today, early on, we'll get to that offensive line. Trust me, if you think that I just got a little bit hot and bothered and heated after that rant with Drake Maye and the off-platform throw, you want to wait and stay tuned because I'm about to light the offensive line up, okay? So you want to stay tuned for that, but give us that throw the thumb up, takes a second of your time, doesn't cost you $1, doesn't even cost you a cent to do it, means a lot to us, so give us that thumbs up on YouTube. Throw a comment in too. Tell me how you feel about the offensive line. Tell me how you feel about Drake Maye. How excited are you about Drake Maye? Or are you trying to temper your expectations? So like it, comment, and if you love what we do here, even if you like what we do here, subscribe. trying to get to 3,500 subscriptions. We're just about 100 subscribers away from hitting that number. You help us out by doing that. Spotify, Apple Pods, rate and review. Chris Collinsworth last night said about Maye's footwork, quote, looks awesome, unquote. So Collinsworth, many others, Dan Orlovsky this morning, Orlovsky, who said that Drake Maye would have to sit for 2 years. Now he's slowly getting on top of that bandwagon. He's climbing aboard the bandwagon, and he's tweeting out videos of Maye talking about his footwork and how he looks much more comfortable than he expected him to. He's ahead of where he anticipated him being at this point. Collinsworth raving about the footwork. You saw the pocket manipulation, sliding left, sliding right, sliding up in the pocket, all of those things. Not perfect. We're not looking for perfection. We're not looking for flawlessness on August 26th. What we're looking for is improvement. And Drake just keeps getting better. Found it interesting last night. Our friend Phil Perry, the senator, asked Gerard Mayo, what happens if Jacoby's unavailable? What happens if that injury tonight is significant and Jacoby can't go? Is Drake Maye the guy? Mayo was all over the joint. Really no answer. Really no answer from Gerard. And this morning he told Greg Hill that at this point, Drake Maye has outplayed Jacoby. So you have Mayo saying this morning that Maye is outplaying Jacoby. Last night, Mayo said that Maye is their second best quarterback. All over the place. I think it's now time to say a little bit less. Gerard, time to say a little bit less, my guy. Because the contradiction, the back and forth, all of those things, like just keeping going nonstop with the media, I don't think he helped himself. I don't think he helped the quarterbacks. I don't think he helped the team in the last 18 hours. I don't think last night's postgame was great with the media. He seemed a little bit frustrated for the first time, really, that we've seen him. The whole next question stuff. So it looked like he was a little bit PO'd last night, which I get. But I don't think he was great with the media last night. He was dancing around with the quarterback thing. Then this morning, he's dancing around a little bit with Greg Hill. I just don't think it wasn't great. It just wasn't great from Mayo. So, Gerard, take a deep breath and just try to say a little bit less moving forward, okay? Because there's some contradictions flying out right now, and I don't think it's helping anybody. What I think is going on is in Gerard's head, he saw that offensive line last night and said, yeah, well, Drake might be our second best quarterback, of course, last night. And then this morning, he's out playing Jacoby. But I think last night when he was answering that question, he's thinking, well, the offensive line's a disaster, so I might not want to start him. I might not want to do that. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Because if you've been watching this podcast, if you've been listening to this podcast, I have been consistent day one about Maye. I am not starting Drake Maye. Many of you can probably finish this sentence. I am not starting Maye until he's ready and I can trust the offensive line. If I think the offensive line is going to be a 5-alarm fire, I am not putting Maye out there. And last night was pretty much a 5-alarm fire. So after watching the joint practice at Philly, I came out of this podcast and I stand by it. I was preaching patience, right? I said, I'm not quitting on the offensive line just yet. I've said the same thing on 98.5. I'm not quitting on the O-line just yet. And I going into last night, I said Chooks, So, Andrews, Robinson, Owenu, at least 4 of those guys. Because Chooks have been up and down. But So, Andrews, Robinson, and Owenu, those have been your 4 best offensive linemen in camp. And it's not because everybody else has been that bad, right? Said 4 of those guys. City So has had a good camp overall. Andrews has been Andrews. Owenu has had a good camp. And Layden Robinson, and don't worry, I'm going to lay into him in a minute. Layden Robinson was really good in camp. And so what happened last night, as far as Robinson goes, to me was very unexpected. And I think a lot of people that have gone to camp and watched the preseason, they would agree with me. I think Taylor Kyles and Evan Lazar and Greg Bedard and Phil Perry, I think a lot of people that have been at those practices and have watched this play out and have watched Layden Robinson, I think all of us would agree that going into last night's game, Robinson was having a damn good camp, especially for a rookie, and he was steadily improving throughout camp. Last night, I have no idea what the hell happened. I saw Brendan Thorne, who is really good at breaking offensive line play down. I saw him tweet earlier a video of Robinson and some nice plays he had last night. I'm sure it wasn't all a train wreck, okay? But Thorne and others have said Robinson's had one of the best preseasons from a rookie offensive lineman. He's been good, and at times he's been really good. So last night's falling off a cliff act, I don't think any of us saw that coming. So maybe you write it off. Maybe you write it off as bad night at the office for the rookie. And he was out there. He was starting. I think it's the first time he's been starting, right, in a preseason game. And he goes out there. Maybe the moment got the best of him. Maybe the moment got the best of Layden Robinson. But going into last night's game, I would have told you that Owenu, Robinson, Andrews, and So were solid. And that's what the case was. Going into last night, the joint practice was an abject failure. But I thought they bounced back pretty well in the Eagles preseason game. They had one pre-snap penalty. They had one flag thrown on them against the Eagles. And overall, their offensive line played pretty well. 3 of the top 5 offensive graded players from Pro Football Focus were from the offensive line. Chooks was your top graded offensive player against Philly. So going into last night, I was not going to quit on this offensive line. I was not going to go crazy and overreact to one joint practice. Has it been great? No. But I wasn't going to go crazy. But last night, my patience started to die. Because last night, this offensive line was horrific. Horrific. It was brutal to watch. There's no other way to put it. It was a mess. And Elliott Wolf, I've said this from day one. Elliott, I give you the benefit of the doubt. You evaluated players. You're a tape guy, quote unquote. You believe Chooks can play left tackle. You believe Caden Wallace can play left tackle. And if not, he can play right tackle at the NFL level. You believe those things, right? You've made those decisions. And I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because none of us know how it's going to play out. Now, some people might already be taking victory laps, and that's cool. That's cool for them if that's what they want to do. I tend to be a little bit more patient when I evaluate football teams. That's why I haven't given you the win-loss record for the Patriots this year. I haven't done it yet because I like to see how things unfold. I like to see how guys develop. I like to see how the rookies work out. I know it's unpopular for some people. I couldn't care less. That's how I do it. I can only be me. So I wasn't going to go out there and I wasn't going to lose my mind over a joint practice. I can criticize the joint practice and I can say it was awful to watch, but I'm not going to sit there and say this offensive line has no chance and by week 6 they're going to suck and it's going to be terrible. And no, because there were good things that we saw. But last night, it was bad. And Elliott Wolf's in the crosshairs, especially when he comes out last week, right? He came out, not yesterday, but the Sunday prior, speaking to the media. Wolf stood there and told Patriots fans that he was confident they had the right pieces on the offensive line. He said it out loud. He said it into a microphone. And now he's in the crosshairs. And he deserves to be in the crosshairs. If this offensive line is a train wreck, it's on Elliott Wolf. Period. End of sentence. It's not on Scott Peters. It's not on Kugler. It's not on Mayo. It's not on Alex Van Pelt. It's the guy who picked the groceries. And if Elliott Wolf picked some spoiled-ass fruit and put it on the offensive line, that's on him. Nobody else should be blamed. The guy at the tippity top of the list, if they're giving up pressures, if the quarterback's running for his life, if they can't open up running lanes, if they're holding, if they're doing all sorts of pre-snap penalties, some of that on the coaching, get to that in a minute. But overall, the process, the operation, the offensive line in totality, if it stinks out loud this year, Elliott Wolf deserves all the criticism that he's going to get. And I told you from the very beginning, I will be at the front of the line. I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I will see how it unfolds. But if this is a disaster, if it is unequivocally a nightmare up front, then I am going right at Elliott Wolf. And that will be on him. So he's in the crosshairs. My patience is fading away. If we're looking at an O-line that can't get out of its own way in week 5, I'm going to be moving some furniture around this podcast room. So, Elliott, I've been patient. But my patience only lasts so long. Scott Peters, Kugler, you're 2 offensive line coaches. Figure it out. Figure it out. Now, it's true. If you're not given top talent, it is what it is. If you've got to deal with mediocre guys up front, some of these things can be excused. But what cannot be excused is your starting left tackle last night, not once, not twice, but 3 times being called for an illegal formation. When you have penalties over and over and over again, yes, it's on the player, but it's also on the coaching staff. It shows incredible, undisciplined play. And Mayo last night said it in the postgame. Mayo admitted it. He took accountability. That's one of the good things he did in last night's postgame. He took accountability for all the penalties and the sloppiness. Yes, some of that has to do with the players, but that's an undisciplined football team. That's on the coach. I said it last year with Bill Belichick. I came out of this podcast and I criticized Belichick for the undisciplined play, and I criticized the coaching staff for all the penalties and not being able to get their guys online, on the tracks to figure this ish out. And I railed it. I went bananas against Belichick last year because of all those pre-snap penalties, all the sloppiness, not figuring things out, all of those things. And I'm going to be consistent. I don't play favorites. And just like I went after Belichick during last season because of all that sloppiness, I'm going to go after Mayo. I'm going to go after Peters. I'm going to go after Kugler. I'm going to go after the offensive staff, Alex Van Pelt. They're in the crosshairs. If they can't get this straightened out, I ain't playing favorites. There's a learning curve. And I'm going to be a little bit more patient versus having a staff that's been together for years and have a head coach who's been doing the job for 25 years. I'm going to be more patient because the experience level is not there. And I certainly expect bumps in the road. I understand this is a rebuild. But you cannot have 15 penalties called on you. 10 were accepted by Washington. I think there were 15 or 16 penalties last night on the Patriots. That is gosh damn ridiculous. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It was ridiculous. I'm not talking about talent level. I'm talking about lack of discipline. I'm talking about the operation. When the operation is sloppy, that's on the coaching staff. If you're getting beat down because you're just not good enough and you give up a pressure, then that's on Elliott Wolf. You just got beat down. There's only so many things you can do technique-wise. But when you're out there and you've got all of these pre-snap penalties and sloppy ass play, it's inexcusable. It's just frankly inexcusable. You're still an NFL football player here. Like, what are we doing? Like, comment, subscribe. Help the channel out. That's how we beat the algorithm. Rate and review on Spotify and Apple Pods. Layden Robinson last night imploded, right? He was blocked into city, so he had a false start. He had a hold. He got blown up and pushed back into the backfield once or twice. He gave up a run stuff. Again, I'm going to be more patient with Layden Robinson. I'm not going to sit there and say that he stinks and write him off because of that awful performance last night. He was terrible with a lot of that stuff. But he's also been, from the beginning of camp through last night, he had been one of the best offensive linemen in camp, and he had steadily gotten better. And so with Robinson, I'm going to take a beat, and I'm going to say rookie, first time under the lights with the starting group. And I thought he looked like a player that got off to a pretty rough start and had a tough time finding his sea legs. So hopefully it's a learning experience. The illegal formations. Chuks Okorafor, you might not think he's a great offensive lineman, but he started almost 60 games at right tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's an NFL lineman. And whether he's a great lineman, good lineman, mediocre lineman, whatever, you cannot get called 3 times for the same illegal formation penalty. And the third one, as I mentioned earlier, wipes out a Drake Maye touchdown. You just can't have that happen. The coaching staff is telling you, you're looking at the pictures. You've been in the league for a long time. You understand where you're supposed to line up. I know he's on the left side versus the right side, but he's a veteran. You cannot have that flag thrown at you 3 times. You just can't do it. Brutal. Brutal. Owenu, illegal formation. At least he had it only called on him once. Now, do I think the referees were making a point of emphasis? Absolutely. Do I think you'd see that many illegal formations called in a regular season game? Probably not. But it doesn't save Chuks. Chuks was still doing something illegal over and over and over again and didn't clean it up. And the coaching staff told him to clean it up, and he still didn't clean it up. Pre-snap sloppiness, the penalties, right? I thought the Patriots had a good bounce back against the Eagles. In that preseason game, they only had 1 flag thrown on them, 1 pre-snap flag. And I gave credit to Mayo. I gave credit to the staff. And I said, you know what? Good job by the coaching staff, because they've been very sloppy, but they were able to straighten some of these things up. They were able to figure it out a little bit, and they only had 1 pre-snap penalty. So good job by the coaching staff. And then last night, they reverted back to their craptacular pre-snap penalties. Just can't have it, man. This is stuff that you just can't have. Sidy Sow, who's been pretty damn good, last night had a holding, stepped on Drake Maye's foot, took his cleat off, and now he's injured. And who knows what kind of injury he has. To my eyes, it certainly looked like a non-contact injury for Sidy Sow. Usually non-contact injuries, especially for big offensive linemen, aren't great. They called it an ankle. He had a walking boot when he left the stadium last night. And I'm telling you, people might sit there and go, Sidy Sow sucks. No, Sidy Sow's good. He had a good rookie season. He's had overall a good camp. Pro Football Focus called him like one of the most, I don't know what it was, underrated players in football or something like that. The most underrated Patriot. Sidy Sow's good. And if you lose Sidy Sow, that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt a lot. Now, you can slide Nick Leverett to guard, and people might say, oh my God, Nick Leverett stinks. Nick Leverett snapping the football, it's been up and down. He's not a natural center. It's not a position he's played a ton, and he's kind of been thrown into it because Jake Andrews and his injury, right? Jake Andrews gets injured. Now you got to figure out who's your backup center. And Leverett at camp has not been an abomination at center. He's been okay. The snaps from time to time, like last night, the snaps have not been, consistent. But again, he's still trying to figure out the position, right? But at guard, he is a natural guard. He's been an NFL guard. He played for the Bucs a number of games. So sliding him to guard, you could do worse. Of course, now you question, well, who's going to be the backup center? That's an issue. Leverett had the first shotgun snap pretty much into the ground. He gave up a couple of pressures. Wasn't his best night, but he is an NFL guard. So you could slide him over there if So's going to be donezo for any period of time beyond like the next couple weeks. They have Michael Jordan, not the MJ, not the Bulls, but they got Michael Jordan. That's a guy you could put in there. I'd be more comfortable with Leverett. If something happens with David Andrews, you're going to probably have to put Leverett at center. Then you might slide Michael Jordan in. But losing City So would be certainly detrimental to this football team because he's been one of the better offensive linemen. Again, last night, they all had issues pretty much. I'm talking about the totality. Losing him would not be great. How much has to do with chemistry? I think it's a legitimate question. When you see what happened last night, when you see some of the lack of communication, you see guys running into each other, you see different things like that. You know, I do think you look at the shuffling that had to happen during practice last week because of some of the injuries they were facing. So some of that lack of chemistry showed. You also did not have Vidarian Lowe. And again, you could feel how you feel about Vidarian Lowe. I get it. But he was this team's starting left tackle for, 2 weeks at practice. Obviously, the Patriots coaching staff believes that he's the best guy right now to play left tackle. And he was not out there last night due to injury. You did not have David Andrews. I'm not excusing all of it. Again, it was an unmitigated disaster for most of the night. I'm not writing that stuff off. I'm simply saying some of these other things could absolutely culminate in what we saw last night. The lack of chemistry because of the shuffling, Lowe and Andrews out, especially Andrews in this offense. You're calling out the protections. That's a pretty significant part of it. So I think if Andrews is out there, I think it's not as bad as it looked. It would still be bad, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it would have been as bad if Andrews was out there. So there's some of that stuff going on. And you wonder how much more shuffling are you going to do? Because what do you do now after watching last night? You have to hope that Vidarian Lowe comes back and he's healthy and he can play left tackle. I understand that Gerard Mayo went out there and said something absurd this morning to Greg Hill, saying that they could find their starting guard or starting tackle off the waiver wire. I don't know why he would say that outside of just saying words. I don't think you can depend on the waiver wire to pluck a guy and say that guy's going to start. It's August 26th. You should not be looking for any starters on your offensive line from the waiver wire. Depth pieces, sure. Maybe you can find a depth piece or two. But the waiver wire is not the great panacea. And as far as these free agents, you can bring them in. You can bring Bakhtiari in. You can bring Leno in. You can bring Humphreys in. But there's a reason why those guys are still unsigned. So at this point, you're mostly looking at what you've got. Unless a team wants to lose their mind and trade a tackle, I don't see it happening. Tackle play's not good. Teams want to hold on to any good tackles that they have. They're not going to be willing to just trade a tackle. It makes no sense. So the waiver wire, free agency, that's a sign of desperate times. And yeah, when you're in desperate times, you take desperate measures. But I don't think you look at the waiver wire and say, we're going to find our starting guard. We're going to find a starting left tackle. You are not. At least for 2024. Maybe you get a young guy and he grows into something, and in 2026 he's okay. But you are not finding your starting left tackle off the waiver wire. And if you are, that means you were at a critical juncture on this offensive line well beforehand. So I'm not looking at those things. If So's out, what do? I think it's Leverett. I think you go with Leverett, Andrews, Owenu. I would seriously entertain the idea of putting Owenu back at right guard because he's a really good right guard. Maybe a core four getting put back on the right side will make him feel more comfortable and he won't be a disaster. I mean, that's what I would do. If I'm the Patriots right now, I get everyone back to their natural positions. Everybody go back to your natural position. I'm putting Okorafor at right tackle. That's what he's comfortable doing. Put him at right tackle. Maybe he won't line up illegally 3 times if he's on the right side. Put him at right tackle. Put Onwenu at right guard. Put Andrews at center. Hope that So's healthy. If he's not, put Leverett at left guard. That's left guard to right tackle. Left tackle, hope that Vidarian Lowe comes back healthy sooner rather than later. Try putting Caden Wallace over there a little bit and see what you got. Calvin Anderson, before he got hurt, was bad. I don't see him being an answer. Let's jump to a super chat. Our guy Charlie with a great line. How's Bruce Armstrong doing these days? Let's see how old Bruce Armstrong is. What is he? Is he in his 60s yet? He's got to be in his 60s, right? 50s? Let's see. 58 years old. He turns 59 September 7th, so he's a couple weeks away from his 59th birthday. Early birthday wishes to Bruce Armstrong. Dude was a beast. I mean, Matt Light. Can we go Matt Light maybe? A little bit more recent. Good Trent Brown. Look, I don't have a problem with them not having Trent Brown on this team because he wore out his welcome. But good Trent Brown. And I do think some of this, look, what's happening with the Patriots offensive line, some of this, not all of it, but some of this is the way it was left. You went into the offseason without a starting tackle. Right? Now, you could have said there's two things. There's two things that I would say. If this season doesn't work out on the offensive line, if it's a mess, and thanks for the super chat, Charlie, always appreciate it. If this offensive line is awful, if it looks like last night and it's like week 6, week 7, there are two things you could second guess. For me, I have 2 second guesses. 2 second guesses with Elliott Wolf. 1 second guess is Jonah Williams. Now, I don't think there's a huge difference between Okorafor and Jonah Williams. And maybe if you get Okorafor back to the right side, as I said, he'll kind of settle in and he'll at least be an average offensive lineman because that's what he looked like for most of camp. So maybe you put him at right tackle. He feels more comfortable and he's at least an average right tackle. You could second guess and say that Jonah Williams would have been better. You could have paid him more money than Arizona paid him. You could have went hard after him, brought him in, and put him at right tackle instead of Okorafor. So that's one. So that's one move that you could second guess. The other move that you could second guess is the draft. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that drafting a wide receiver in the second round was the wrong move because you go back to the draft. The first tackle that was taken in the second round was drafted at 55. The league told you that offensive tackle should not have been picked early to mid-second round. There were 6 or 7 guys in that first round. Once you got past that initial 6 or 7, you were looking at late second, early third round. The second guess you could have is questioning Elliott Wolf not moving up from the top of the third round into the late second round when there was a run on tackles. That is a reasonable second guess you can have. But I want to give you the context because if you did make that trade and you did move up into the second round in the latter stages of that second round and you drafted somebody like a Patrick Paul or you drafted somebody like a Kingsley Suamataia, you draft one of those guys, right? You would have had to give up. You would have had to give up either the pick you used, right? You would have definitely given up Caden Wallace, but you also might have had to give up your 4th round pick that was Layden Robinson. So the question, if you're going to second guess Wolf on how he handled the draft, the question is, would you rather have Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson or one of those other rookie tackles like a Paul, like a Suamataia? So those are the two things he could have done differently. I'm not here to tell you that a left tackle was there. It really wasn't. Tyron Smith, I think he goes to the Jets because he wants to play with Aaron Rodgers. He knows he's only got a year or 2 left in his career. He wants to win. I don't think he's signing with a 4-win team. I don't think he's doing it. I don't think he had any interest in playing alongside Jacoby Brissett or quarterback X. Not at this stage of his career. So those are the two guys. Those are the two things that I think you could second guess. And it would be reasonable. It'd be a reasonable football conversation to have. But we'll see. If Jonah Williams ends up being a disaster in Arizona, then you really didn't have any choices, right? You picked a core of 4 instead of Jonah. If Jonah stinks, a core of 4 stinks, guess what? They both stink. So you didn't really have an option there. And as far as the draft, if Layden Robinson ends up being pretty damn good, again, last night was bad. But if he gets back to what he was during camp and what he was earlier in the preseason, if he's doing that, if he's performing like that guy, then you have Robinson, you have Wallace. And if Wallace ends up being a piece to this offensive line by week 5 or 6, and you have Wallace and Robinson, and they're at least playing average football, I'd rather have 2 average linemen than 1 rookie tackle that I'm banking on. So you can absolutely second guess it, but there's context to that conversation that we have to make sure we are highlighting, because it's disingenuous if you don't. I would put Onwenu back at right guard. I would put a core for at right tackle. Andrews is Andrews. So or Leverett at left guard. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing, and I'm hoping that solidifies, that they could play average football, and I'll figure out left tackle. I'll help left tackle all that I can. That's what I would do. And if you've got to move Leverett to center because Andrews gets dinged up, then I think you put Leverett as backup center. He takes over. Not perfect, but Jake Andrews got hurt. What are you going to do? So you've got, Andrews there. If he gets dinged up, Leverett goes back to center. And then maybe you got Michael Jordan at left guard. Maybe you've got another guy that you find on the waiver wire who is more of a second or third guard for you, not a starter. And then you can put that person in there. Terry with a $20 super chat. Thank you. I appreciate you, Terry. First take on the game I have listened to today. Thanks, Nick. Hope things will look better for game 1. I think all of us hope things will look better for game 1. I do think, I'm going to stand by this. I do think they have, if So's healthy, you have 3 guys out there that are going to be okay. I believe in Andrews. I believe in Onwenu. And I believe in Sidy So. Do I think Sidy So's great? No, I don't. But I do think if So's healthy, you've got 3 out of those 5 guys. And I think Leverett is okay at guard. So's better, but Leverett's okay. I don't think you completely lose your ass with Leverett out there. Got to figure out the tackles. Is putting Chooks back at right tackle, does that get him straight? Does that get him figured out, right? Does he now stop overthinking? Does he settle it down? Does the game slow down for him? And he can give you at least somewhat average play. If he can give you average play at right tackle, then again, all the focus is at left tackle. But I do think it was ugly last night. But I'm giving Robinson the benefit of the doubt because he's been so good up until last night, and he's a rookie. And rookies have those moments. Rookies have those games. So I'm not going to sit there and just say he stinks, forget about it, no chance. So I do think they have at least 3 guys on that offensive line. It's tackles. It's the tackles. So if Chooks if the swing back to right tackle gets Chooks back to being, average, then you feel a little bit better. Don't forget, give us that thumbs up on YouTube, all the likes to beat that algorithm, slap it in the face if you like what we do here. Give us that like on YouTube. Comment, throw a comment in. I see a bunch of your comments now. If you're listening on demand, if you're watching on demand, throw your comment in there. Even if you threw a comment in there now, if you want to come back later on and throw a comment in and just say hi, those things help us out. It takes a second of your time. So give us that thumbs up, comment, subscribe as well. Trying to get to 3,500. We're about 100 subscribers away. I desperately want to get to 3,500 before the first game kicks off. The first game that counts. So like, comment, subscribe, rate and review. Rate and review if you are on Spotify and Apple Pods. I'm heading to Monday Night Raw because I'm a pro wrestling geek, and I'm proud to say that. Going to Monday Night Raw tonight with the wife in Providence. So if any of you are going out there, say hello. Look forward to seeing you. Everybody else, enjoy your Monday night. We are back. We are back on Wednesday. I will say this. There's a possibility, if not probability, that we could be back tomorrow, depending on, when this quarterback announcement happens. We got cut down day tomorrow. Cuts have already been made. Some of the cuts already made. Deshaun Fenwick's been cut. LaMichael Petway's been cut. Azizi Hearn, who was awful last night, he got cut. So cuts are happening right now. So there is a possibility. There's a possibility we're back tomorrow with kind of a quick breaking news-ish pod. But the plan right now is Wednesday, 3 p.m. We'll be back on YouTube. I also want to remind you, I don't think I've said this yet, but Friday, no podcast on Friday, Labor Day weekend. I'm working on at 98.5 on Friday from 10 to 2, so it's impossible to do a pod at 3. And it's Labor Day weekend. Many of you are going to be off anyway. So Friday and Labor Day, we will have no podcast on those days. But we will be back on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We'll talk to you then. Be well, be safe, enjoy yourself. This has been the Nick Cattle Show.